This is the Game Philosopher, and today I have to do things differently because my computer has some USB problems, so I can't really use my camera or anything like that. Yes, that's a cheap little camera right there. That's why my videos tend to not be high quality. But this camera on my phone is actually probably higher quality than this camera, which is much bigger. And anyway, today this video might be short depending on my phone's battery life. I have 50%, and of course I'm going to edit it a little bit within the YouTube, but this is part of the modern Platonism series, and this is the 8th installment, which I'll be talking about justice. Now, not just any version of justice. We're actually, well, the thing is, I'm going to try to avoid using references to the Republic, not because it's I don't like Socrates' definition there, but rather that I kind of found there's a smaller essay, or not essay, but a smaller dialogue on justice, which was called On Justice, and it's by Plato. And I find there's a lot of interesting arguments there. So, as Socrates and his friend are talking, his friend tries to argue that lying and telling the truth, benefit and harming, that's all both justice and not justice at the same time. And there's some parallels to the Republic in this small dialogue. And Socrates says pretty much that you have two eyes and two nostrils, and pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can't, if you remove the words left and right, like, so there's no difference between the left eye and the right eye. What happens is that you can't really, things kind of get screwy, because when you look at justice versus not justice or unjust, it's kind of the same way, because when you have these actions, but they're all equally just and not just at the same time, it's very contradictory. It's kind of like the same reason why Socrates and Theaetetus argued against the Protagorean position, which actually implied the same thing, that things can be both truth and false at the same time. Now he goes on to a very interesting thing, that justice is not necessarily these actions, but rather the right applications of the actions, such as, for example, and I'm going to give examples of my own, I'm not going to use Socrates' examples. For example, lying, well, if you're lying for the good of an army, and if you're inside an army, then the lying becomes a just action, because you're putting benefit towards the nation. While lying to your friend about something that would benefit him is actually unjust. But telling the truth to someone, if you don't know how to do it right, what happens is that you end up giving too much, spilling the beans. You're telling people way too much information, and that itself makes the whole action of telling the truth unjust. But at the same time, if you say that justice and fairness are the same thing, it's actually not, because a lot of times people, when they're talking about justice, they often say justice in its relation to fairness. They don't say justice or fairness. They say justice and fairness, acting as if they are two separate things, and they truly are two separate things, because things that are fair are not necessarily always things that are just, such as someone having to work really hard for a lot of money, but at the same time, it's not really fair that they would have to sometimes stop doing whatever they wanted to do, such as working days that would not be beneficial to them, in their opinion. But at the same time, two people, in the same example, you have two people who are working at the same company. What happens is if a company says, okay, you both worked really hard, you both can take the day off. Well, someone has to take the place, so it would cause harm to that company. So at the same time, that would become unjust. But at the same time, if it would say, okay, you can have the day off today, you can have the day off tomorrow, or a few days off right now, and you can have a few days off, that becomes just. But at the same time, Socrates also talks about justice as a human virtue, and that. And now I'm going to the Republic area. So, the justice as a human virtue, and that which hurts. That which hurts man is. Sorry, I have a little quote right here. So that which hurts man actually is that which is unjust, and or that which prevents them from being just. And so ultimately, the argument would be that ignorance is the contrary of justice. Now, a lot of people say that mercy is, but at the same time, mercy is not really contrary to justice, unless we're talking about political justice, then, or legal justice. Then mercy becomes somewhat a very interesting dance with justice. But if we are to take the Socratic position, in legal justice, there would be not much of the justice that would be aimed at punishing in the sense of a retributional style of justice, but more like a educational. So, for example, if someone does some heinous crime, and there's a bounty for their head, so the guy's taken to court, and they give him the death penalty. It's not really a punishment towards the guy per se, but rather it's to teach others who would do that crime that it's actually not a good crime to do. Now, at the same time, for someone doing a minor offense, let's say you get caught doing drugs. Well, a Socratic punishment, I think, for that would be more like, for the legal drugs, would be more like being forced to watch a video which shows the bad effects of it, then to go on to therapy or whatever you need to get outside of that type of stuff. It may be fine, but at the same time, a lot of people, when they say justice and mercy are contrary, that's actually not really quite true. Like, a lot of people who say that actually read a lot of Seneca and is on mercy, which was a really good essay when it comes to legal justice, but at the same time, mercy and justice are not really opposites, because when you look at it, mercy is just another expression of justice. It's more thinking about things and trying to balance out your hatred of someone so that you have a more just retribution towards them. So I wouldn't say that mercy is quite the contrary of justice, but at the same time, if you're ignorant and let's say someone attacks you and steals all your property, so you decide to get really angry, you come after that person and you beat them up, and then you burn down all their property or whatever, that's actually not justice at all. That's being unjust. but you might not be aware of it because you were ignorant of the fact that it's unjust, so you're acting unjust. Now, just to give my dog a good show, she's a good dog. So, being just is not really a contrary of the mercy, but at the same time, Plato also talks about how the soul is harmed by ignorance, and if the soul is harmed by ignorance, and if justice is human virtue, then it follows that it's unjust to keep someone ignorant so that they screw up, even though at the same time it's unjust to also not lie when you're told to lie if you have the orders to lie, if you're like a warrior. So, yeah, justice is kind of a topic which is just from one area to another, and it's very hard to tell what is just and what's not at times, because it can become complicated, because things can be unjust only because they're applied badly, which is why knowledge is so important. And at the same time, we take a lot of the things of a just life and we look at virtue. Now, I think justice would apply to knowing how to use these different virtues to give the benefit to your fellow man. And Socrates would agree with this, because in his on justice he talks about the knowledge of how to do stuff versus the knowledge of not how to do or the lack of knowledge or the ignorance of how to do stuff. So how to use lying, how to use harm, how to use benefit. That would create a just man. And then he talks about wisdom. All this goes together, and it teaches you how to live a just life. Now I can go through all these theories, like consequentialism, deontology, whatever. The big problem with these things is that, for one, we're talking about Platonism. Two, there's a big overcomplication that happens when you are looking at ethics from these perspectives, as opposed to the perspective of a character build or character building ethic. And I'm going to, in the next episode, talk about virtue. And when I talk about virtue, I will be talking not only about whether or not it can be taught, but character building, ethics, and morals. And I hope to see you guys then.